if you haven't experienced sexual trauma, but bodily trauma, it could be productive for you to do quote unquote like exposure therapy like you did of like, you know what, I'm just going to go get fucked.
I'm going to do it.
I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off.
I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off.
That is not necessarily a bad way to go about it. But if you were experiencing sexual trauma, that could be a very quick way to re-traumatize yourself.
Almost dying taught me how to live. Being struck by a car left me in a 3.5-week coma with 15 broken bones and 16 surgeries to complete, including brain surgery. However, I woke up from that coma in an even greater place than I ever foresaw for myself. How? The universe will guide you out of the darkness and into the light if you allow it. Often, spirituality comes off as too highbrow. I'm not about that. Welcome to the podcast that talks and teaches about it through the lens of humor. Together, we'll harness positive energy and use it to work with the universe, all while giggling the entire time. Welcome to Gabriella Rebranded. Win most, lose some.
I'm really excited to record this episode that my grandma is absolutely not allowed to listen to.
Hey.
This is Nadège, Nadège was pivotal in helping me start this podcast and telling me what I needed to do. But before we get to that, I want to introduce Nadège. She is a sex scholar, author, teacher, and speaker. Best-selling author of 4 books, including one on sex and astrology, which I just read and is absolutely incredible. You are a healthy sex advocate, trained dominatrix, podcast host, and producer of your very own Pleasure Science podcast. Producer and host for all of it. In this episode, we are going to dive into sex and trauma, but there is way too much to fit into one podcast episode. So if you would like to know, study, heal, learn more on Nadège's Pleasure Science website, pleasurescience.com, she offers healing trauma and self-sabotage package, which includes videos, exercises, and my favorite, meditations. Nadège offers tons of more packages on her website, again, pleasurescience.com. And her packages address things like BDSM, flirting, and simply elevating your sex life and own personal pleasure. You can also find her books, her podcast, upcoming events on her website, including a how to book her for your own event if you would like to. I'll be pasting the link to Nadège's website and her podcast in the show notes. But for now, on Gabriella Rebranded, we're going to do a little episode on sex and trauma.
Hey, I'm excited. It's always funny to say I'm excited to talk about sex and trauma, but I genuinely get very excited
to talk about
sex and trauma.
Well, I know what was so interesting about you is you had a little bit of your own trauma with sex, and that's what made you become a sex scholar, right?
Absolutely. I couldn't orgasm. I kept dating all the wrong people. I would say I didn't even get to the dating stage. I would meet people. I'd have sex quickly, which I'm a big advocate for. I think casual sex and having sex right away is in no way, shape, or form a bad thing or a behavior that proves you're doing something bad.
See, Mom?
However, it's the intention behind the sex, right? And so for me, when I was really young, I was violated by someone, and this made me really not trust sex, even though I wanted it. And so then my body developed something called vaginismus, which is where the muscles of the vulva will close of their own accord when the body feels threatened. And it's really difficult. It makes sex very painful. But it also makes it difficult to even use a tampon.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. I know that people have that issue. People have had that issue just with using tampons.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of, when you think of vaginismus specifically, there could be bodily reasons why it happens, but oftentimes it's a mental trauma and it's a mental protective mechanism. And so I developed vaginismus like as a teenager. Like I'm 18, 19. I'm very hungry for love and for pleasure and for sex. I was always curious about sex ever since I was young. But then I would kind of force myself to do things too soon. And I didn't really have the emotional maturity or awareness that I was giving sex as a transaction, hoping to get love in return,
Okay.
which is not the way to go into empowered, casual sex and fun. And so the second person I slept with violated me. And I really internalized that. And really, my body learned like sex isn't safe and Nadège is not good at making choices. And yet I still wanted sex. And so I had this very confusing experience of my body doesn't trust me. I'm even not trusting my decisions that great. And yet I'm following an authentic desire for connection and intimacy that is very purely, it's very pure and very sweet and very good. And, you know, that was many years ago. And I became a sex scholar because of it. So at 18, 19 years old, I'm exploring sex. It's not good, both because of the people I'm choosing and the way in which I'm going in and doing sex. And what I mean by that was I learned that good sex meant like you kiss and then you're horny and then something hard slides into something wet and you've done it. And so I would go in with a sex expectation that my body should be ready for penetration. Yeah. That I should be ready for penetration very quickly. And that's not realistic.
No.
For any, whether it's in your throat, in your butt, or in your vulva. It's not realistic. But that's where the pain and the trauma started to come from. And I refused to live in a reality and an existence where sex was awful. And so when I got to UC Berkeley, I was actually an English major. I wanted to,
you started as an English major.
I started as an English major. I've always loved like witches and dragons and vampires. I write stories in my free time. That's my creative practice.
Oh my God.
But back then, so almost like over 15 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm going to become like a fantasy writer. So I go to Berkeley, I get into the writing program, and quickly realized that actually there's an incredible gender and women's studies department and feminist studies and sexology. And I was able to take an elective in my first semester that was all about gender and sex. And I just completely, it was like being hit in the face in a good way. I was like, oh my God, this is my call. This is, this just feels like my soul is activated.
Yes.
And so I switched majors and I started learning about sex. I healed my life. I started my company, Pleasure Science, because people don't know about sex and they don't have credible people to go to.
They don't.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, I'm a sex scholar. You can trust me. I just want to heal these hoes. That's, but that was the beginning of my journey, again, over 15 years ago, of trauma, of picking all the wrong people, of disconnecting with my body as a method to, have the body feel good, which is, I think, so common for so many of us. But that was how it all began.
Wow. So it was so your decision to become a sex scholar, which that's your life, that's what your brand is right now. It started at its root. It was because you had your own trauma when it came to having sex specifically.
Oh, yeah. Sex and relationships, because the sex trauma piece was the vaginismus and not being able to enjoy anything. But then I also had relationship and love trauma. Yeah. So growing up, my mom was sick and my mom died when I was young. And so I had two traumas I had to heal. I had the trauma of trying to force my body to have sex before I was ready and being a little overzealous, not checking in with my body. And then I had the other healing of I actually don't trust relationships and love because my mother died young. And I internalized this belief that I had lost before I even got the chance to play the game when it came to love and trust. And I couldn't. I had a really hard time.
I'd lost before
committing.
I even got to play
that
the
was
game.
how it felt.
Like that. I like that.
That was how it felt. And so because my mom died by the time I was like 22.
Okay. So very young. Yes.
Very young, very formative years. And then when I would fall for someone, I would instantly become extremely avoidant. And I didn't realize it at the time, but what was happening in my mind and body was this thought of what's the point of commitment? They're going to die. Like, so other people have trauma of like, oh, someone's going to cheat. I can't trust anyone. I can't. And mine was, I've experienced that like life will take the people you love,
Yeah.
you don't have control over that.
Yeah.
And it made, so those were the two traumas I was dealing with. And the sex trauma was more in my face because I'm like, well, my pussy's not working.
It's not working.
So, you
It's
know,
not
and then
working.
once I started healing sex, and then I'm like, oh, I can have an orgasm with anyone. I have great loverships. I'm good at communication. I've explored all the things, but then relationships still weren't taking off. And that was when I realized, like, oh, I healed the body sex stuff, but
I
there's
didn't
something
heal.
else. Yeah.
Yes, you didn't heal the
The
emotional
emotional,
part. And just real quick to go back to the body and sex stuff and how like you're like, I thought sex was you kissed and then you got horny
Yeah.
and then you did it. I feel like we all think it's like that when we're young.
Yeah.
Like you honestly think it's like a step by step. Like we don't. I mean, to a bigger thing that we'll talk more about, like sex and trauma, is
Yeah.
really not talked about. But with trauma survivors, but also sex and like how to do it, it's
Yeah.
really a figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
Like all the advice you basically get is like, we do this.
Yeah.
But then it's like, unless you have super dope parents, it's
Yeah.
figure it out for yourself.
It is.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it should be figure it out for yourself because everyone's needs are different, but it shouldn't be you have no community as you figure it out for yourself.
It shouldn't be because it's
like we need community. Humans need community just as much as we need food. It's a core need. And in sex, we have no community. We have no one to talk to. We have no one to learn from. And then, yeah, you're learning it by yourself and getting it wrong. Most of us are. And by getting it wrong, I literally mean like you're not just prioritizing your own pleasure and you're not talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, the reason why sex doesn't work is actually incredibly simple. It's always one core issue that has to do with either self-worth, communication, or like lack of confidence. Like it's always a very, they're always the same core wounds. Not when we're dealing about trauma specifically, because that adds another spicy ingredient.
I know, a very fun one.
Yeah, but to like bring all of that home. But yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, I'm gonna talk about this book more at the end, but I was just talking about she has this book called Sextrology, which I'm fucking obsessed with. It's literally like my how-to guide for like I will forever be using this because it's also crazy accurate. And it like talks about all the signs and how they operate with sex and your compatibility with the other signs. And I said what's so crazy about it is like people are so bad at talking about sex, like even people who haven't had trauma. And it's like these things that I was picking up on with this other person, this was the most validating book because I was like, the things that I'm picking up on are correct. And then you also say, this is how you talk about it and fix it.
Yes.
So now I'm like, okay, I'm all prepared to have that conversation to fix these problems. So anyway, this book, cannot recommend enough.
Yay. Well, and that's why I wrote it because astrology's like sex is intimidating, but astrology isn't.
Exactly.
And I have loved astrology since I was 15. And so I wrote that book because I thought this is like a good way to give people a tool, but it feels fun. And it doesn't feel like a chore. Fun. It doesn't feel like something else on your to-do list. Like I have to talk about sex and I have to do it. It doesn't make it feel medical.
No.
I feel like what's the problem with a lot of sex education and sex wellness is it feels really medical. That's not sexy unless you have a medical kink. Like Nurse Dot, love that for you. But it's not off the bat sexy to like medicalize so sextrology I thought was a good way to be like, hey, let's talk about astrology, your identity. Let me give you some essential skills. And I'm glad it makes you feel not crazy.
God, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's the most, it was incredible. Amazing. Everyone get it. Amazing. But speaking about community, and you were talking about how there's a lot of conversation there's a ton of different types of trauma. Like we can talk about all of them. But speaking of physical trauma, like what I went through, so non-sex related trauma, because that's obviously a whole other component. But physical trauma, no one like talks to you and it's like, hey, this is how you re-enter having sex. And it's fucking scary.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was like everything else in my life is different because brain injury. Why would this not be different? But no one talked about it. So for almost 2 years, I didn't want to do it. Like I was so scared. And then I was like, I'm not going 2 years without doing it. So I did it. So random, whatever. So I did it. But then I realized it wasn't that bad, and I realized all is well. And I've also actually had like a huge change in some perspectives that I'm curious about if they're normal or not. But it was the most scary, intimidating thing. Then when I finally did it, all was well, all was fine. But, well, actually, there were a couple trauma issues, but it's so not a spoken about thing.
Yeah.
What, like,
why is it not spoken about?
when you've gone through physical trauma, like,
Well, so all of your...
It's like, no, I can't be the only one who feels this way.
Oh, no. And we don't talk about it or prepare people for it. From just like a basic perspective, doctors, urologists, gynecologists, and therapists have no sex ed training. Unless the word, none. Nurses don't have it. Maybe it'll be one class over their 10 years of learning. Maybe it'll be a week. But yeah, they're so this isn't the fault of any of these medical practitioners.
It's the fault of the system.
It's the fault of the system.
Yeah.
So right here, this is the first level of failure that we see. We're not talking about how to heal from sex and trauma, especially if it's not a sexual trauma. Because even our medical practitioners, they're not given the resources to help you. I've seen a lot of clients who also suffer from vaginismus or other sex-related traumas. And they'll go to their gynecologist, and their gynecologist will say, oh, use lube for that. And that's where the help begins and ends. Again, not their fault, and I don't want to drag anybody through the mud.
Yes.
It's the fault of the system.
It's the fault of the system.
That's failure number one right there. So then you're not getting the information from the medical people you trust, which is important. Then on top of that, we're taught that sex is private. And so if you talk about sex, you're doing sex wrong. If you're having too much sex, you're doing sex wrong. If you're not having enough sex, you're doing sex wrong. But then if you, God forbid, you talk about all of those things, you're admitting to the failure, you're opening up this vulnerable wound. So for so many of us, like simply saying sex isn't working for me is one of the hardest things to do in the world.
Yeah.
And then psychologically, when we're thinking of sex,
because sex is supposed to be the best thing ever.
It's supposed to be the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be the best lover. No one goes into sex. Like if I joined a marathon and I finished in like the lower bottom, I wouldn't care. You know, I did the marathon. But if I am trying to have sexy time with someone and they tell me, damn, you're in like the top 5% of people I've ever had sex with, I would be mortified. I want to hear that I'm the best you've ever had. That's what we all want.
That's what we all want.
So psychologically, we're dealing with sex is private. To talk about it is failure. And I have the expectation that I will be the best you've ever had, or that is failure.
Yes.
And so we have high expectations, no one to speak to, which leads to not talking about it. And then the other piece about trauma, there's this very famous book called The Body Keeps the Score.
I love that book.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it talks all about how your body holds on to trauma, what that does. Now, something that the book doesn't really go into, which is just as important, is the voice keeps the score too.
Okay.
So this problem with not talking about sex makes the trauma worse. It makes everything worse. If you think about using your voice and expressing yourself, like if you're angry with a sibling and you two have been fighting for months, but then finally have the conversation, maybe you don't fix the issue, but you finally talk about it. Don't you feel like a weight is lifted off of your shoulders?
100%. It's a relief. Yes.
And so this is how the voice can also keep the score. If you're holding on, and most of us are doing this with sex and with emotions in relationships that are sexual.
Okay.
Because we don't talk about sex. Oftentimes we'll also not talk about feelings associated with sex or money. Fun fact. Money and sex have create very similar points of tension and conflict in long-term relationships.
That is money and sex.
Money and sex. Yeah.
So fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm looking at my notes because that just like
I know, doesn't that always
that
whenever people hear that, they like it resonates and then they're like, I must know more.
Yeah. it's like I must know more, and then Now the next, I guess, because first to just bounce off that question, what are the tensions that like wind up becoming the most common tensions
In long-term relationships?
Yes.
Lack of affection.
Okay.
Lack of admiration.
Okay.
Maybe you feel it from your partner or yourself. like you don't admire them or they don't admire you, and that's creating unspoken tension. If we don't admire our partner, we don't lust after them. We're going to stop desiring them. So a lot of times a sexless relationship can come from slowly losing admiration for your partner.
Okay.
So that's a really big one. And then sex itself can be a reason why couples fight. Usually, like 99% of the time, sex is not the problem.
Yes.
In your relationship or in dating, it's communication, expectations, or lack of communication. But money is another one that couples can fight over. And again, it comes from that same place of, oh, this is supposed to be private. And I'm supposed to have money. Like I'm supposed to automatically, without nobody teaching me, know how to handle money and build wealth and buy a house and do all the right things. And, God forbid I don't do that.
Yes.
But then no one teaches you about money. Same thing with sex. Like I'm supposed to be a porn star in the bedroom, a wife in the daytime, and then men have their own, and then queer people have their own standards, like no matter what your gender is, no matter what your sexual orientation and relationship style is, monogamy, poly, everybody now has standards of what it's supposed to look like to be successful in the thing that you're choosing. And so that like need to create a successful on the outside looking relationship also creates a lot of problems. I'd say another big problem in relationships is no one is in agreement on these terms, these three terms and what they mean. And people think that these three terms are synonyms and they're not. Sex, love, and commitment are three different things.
Yes.
And relationships that last the test of time have a agreement and definition of like what is sex and pleasure and fulfilling sex for us. What is love? What does that mean? And that is different from commitment. Now, here's what people usually do. They'll think, oh, I'm having consistent sex with you. Therefore, you're probably going to be falling in love with me and wanting commitment.
Yes.
Right? Or it's like you've said, this is another big one. I say I love you and my partner hears you're going to be with me forever. This actually happened to me where I went from a polyamorous relationship to a monogamous one. I was dating in a poly relationship and then my partner had to move back to New Zealand and that was too long distance as you could in California, New Zealand.
Yeah, that's pretty long
So we
distance.
tried to keep it going, but we ended up breaking up. And then a few years later, I met someone who expressed like, I'm strictly monogamous. She could not do anything open. And I hadn't done strict monogamy in like 10 years. Like I definitely have done monogamish. But I got into that relationship. And when we said, I love you to each other, she heard me like her thing that she heard was, you're going to marry me. And when I said, I love you, my thing is, I accept you. That's what, when I say I love you, that's actually what I am saying
I
to
accept
someone.
all of you.
I accept all of you. I love all of you. I'm loyal to you.
Yes.
That's what I mean. But for her, love means, oh, you're going to marry me. You're going to commit to me. And so then like at the end of our relationship, when I kind of realized I couldn't do I don't think I could ever be in a strictly monogamous relationship. I need some kind of openness, and that wasn't going to be for her.
Thing with her, yeah.
And when we, had that difficult conversation, she kept saying, "But you love me, and you said you loved me." And then I started doing research more into relationships after that breakup because so many elements of the breakup were fascinating to me. I'm my first experiment always, And
I'm my first experiment. I love it.
So when things are going, like when my love life is going in a new direction, I'm like, what's happening? Why? What can I learn? And
you always want to learn.
Always. And what I learned is there are certain phrases
so
and
Sagittarius
activities.
Of you.
Yes.
That's very Sagittarius.
Absolutely.
Of you. Yeah.
But people have what we call in the sex world, like these unspoken contracts.
Yes.
And I love you is an unspoken contract. Like for you, if you said that you love someone, what are you actually saying to them, Gabriella? Do you know?
No, I don't know. If I say I love you to someone, that means like, I guess for me, it means like every part of you makes me happy and like, I will stand by you. I got you. Like I will stand by you. I got you.
Yeah.
But like, that doesn't mean I am not opposed to a sexually open but emotionally monogamous relationship.
Totally.
So me saying I love you doesn't necessarily mean it
like
means
I'm gonna marry you and that's
it means emotionally monogamous. Like I'll stand by you in that way, but like you might not be able to give me all the kinks that I want. And things like that. Yeah.
And see, right? So like
that's what I mean.
If you have that definition, and then let's say you're dating a guy who's like so excited to like have a family, and he says I love you, and to him it means, oh, Gabriella said I love you, she's gonna have my kids.
Yes.
But you didn't name that in your right. And it's like we have these because of all the ways we're taught to view love and sex, we have unwritten contracts and assumptions and expectations like, oh, you had sex with me, that means you like me and we're moving towards dating. But did anyone actually say that? Have we, right?
Yes.
Or we're saying that we love each other. But like for me, right, like I realized through this relationship that my contract with love is acceptance, seeing and celebrating people, growth, and that I was dating someone who love meant commitment, tradition, stand by me, monogamy, and we had unspoken contracts happening, simply activated by the words "I love you." And everybody has a contract and expectation that is unspoken and connected to words like I love you or actions like having sex.
Everyone does.
Yeah. And you have to figure out what those are and talk about. So thinking of what goes wrong in long-term relationships, that's one of the big ones.
Yes.
You haven't talked about any of those things. And most people also don't. I mean, I study sex and relationships, but most people don't. Like they're not, you know what I mean? Like, and you don't need to. Like that, like live your best life. That's why I exist. You can come get a little shot of pleasure science and go on your way.
You'll be having more fun with it.
But it's like these are the things. And so and areas of life that really activate that are money and sex. Because like money and sex, like we're taught not to talk about it. We're taught that you should automatically know how to do both and be successful. And we're also taught what success is supposed to look like, both sexually and financially. So then if you're gay, if you're kinky, if you're non-monogamous, if you're all of them, like you're like, oh, so did I just get born doing it all wrong?
Like, did I,
and same with money. Like if I remember working with a couple and they were very affluent, but the husband took care, like he was the financial, like he made the money and kept track of the money, and he made some bad investments, and he admitted it to me, because the way that I worked with this couple, when I work with people, I tailor it to their needs and it's always unique. So with this couple, it would be a session for her, a session for him, a session together. And so in one of the sessions, just me and him, he admitted like he was having all of these struggles in the bedroom because he hadn't told his wife that like they were kind of in financial trouble, that things were changing quickly. He made some mistakes, and that he had so much meaning attached to being a good man means being financially healthy, being a provider, bring all of these things. And what ended up happening is, of course, I like coached them through talking about that together, and it brought them way closer, and it gave this opportunity for them to question gender roles, to decide into their relationship instead of sliding into this dynamic they were told to have. And it gave her this opportunity to step up. It gave him the opportunity to feel taken care of and nurtured. And it was so beautiful. And something he really realized was like, he actually didn't like being a bread earner. He's like, and she was kind of like, I don't mind
being the breadwinner,
or just like contributing. Like we can both equally contribute financially to this relationship, and like no one person has to do it all. Exactly. And for some people that where I've seen like power dynamics are sexy and fun. I love being treated like a princess, like everyone has their own different thing. But again, if this couple didn't talk about the money piece, then they would have probably divorced. But they're together now because they just simply talked about it,
the money piece.
But the sex piece is similar. It's, like those same,
And with trauma, I feel like there is so much more that needs to be talked about. And because we're bad at talking about it, that multiplies it to the scale. Like something that I went through is that it doesn't bother me anymore, but I had broken my pelvis and I broke 2 vertebrae in my low back. And certain positions would hurt me.
Right.
And I didn't want to say it. And this guy I was dating last summer was like, when I do this, you look like you're in pain. I can tell that you're in pain. And I was like, no, it's fine. Like I tried to. And then he the next time we had sex, he literally was like, this hurts you. You're in pain. And I was like, but that's your favorite position. Like the people pleaser me, it was his favorite position. I was like, that's your favorite position. Like I want to get, he's like, but I don't want to hurt you.
Yeah.
And like that became a whole thing. Like my head, when I switch positions too quickly, my head can start to bother me sometimes, not as much anymore, but still a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's like an inability to talk about it. And like, I know,
Well, so I deal with this all the time because so many people have painful sex for so many reasons.
Yeah.
So when you are in that position of just like, you know that moving too quickly will give you the spins.
Yeah.
You know that certain positions are painful. This is great information to tell a lover ahead of time. So when I'm working with people who are dating, one of my biggest rules that I like beat into these people, because people do not do this, communicate early, communicate often. And this includes sex.
The
and
earliest. The early is what's so scary because before you have sex the first time,
Yep. But here's the thing, especially if you're experiencing painful sex or healing from trauma, because other folks like you had physical issues during sex based on the trauma. Other people will have mental problems.
Issues.
Mental issues where they'll freeze up.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. So my trauma was less this position hurts and more like all of a sudden I'm having a trauma response. I don't feel safe. I want to just start sobbing and I'm just so like, and so regardless of what the behavior is that happens when you're traumatized, this is what you do. So when you're seeing someone, that things happen to you, like you talk to them ahead of time. And this is the script that I like to use. Okay. And I recommend doing this even if you haven't had sex with someone yet, like still talk about sex.
Please give me the script.
And so the script is, hey, I went through some trauma and my body is still healing. And so my body will do funny things during sex. For example, I'll get kind of lightheaded in this position, or that position hurts because I broke my spine and it's still healing. And I'm telling you this so that way when we're in the moment, you know ahead of time and I can give you feedback and you're not going to take it personal because I want us to have really good sex together. And that's how you frame it, because the purpose of talking about sex ahead of time is so you have permission to bring it up in the moment.
And they won't take it personally.
They don't take it personally. And you also feel strong enough and courageous enough to do so. Because this is what people are getting wrong. And I did this myself. I'm having painful sex. I'm not going to tell my lover until we're in the bedroom. And then I end up not saying anything at all because it's the worst. Like I feel like it's the worst possible time.
Yeah.
And it's essentially like, imagine being an athlete. You don't go to any trainings and then you expect yourself to perform on game day. That is what we are doing. Sexual communication is the training time. That's when you're in the sex gym and you're talking to your lover and saying, hey, this is stuff to expect. And then when you guys are in bed together, your lover is going to start asking you questions, most likely, or check in. Like it gives your lover permission to check in or to look out for it. But it most importantly makes you feel way more empowered to speak up because you already spoke up. You did it in a low stakes situation. And now in the high stakes sexual situation on game day, you have what you need.
Wake up, it's game day.
And then it is. And another tip I'll give too, when we're really scared, we need a break, we're in the middle of sex, you want to say something, maybe you're experiencing pain, or maybe you're just nervous, ask for a water break. If you don't know how to just take a beat in the moment and your body is in pain or you're mentally not there and your instinct is to just push and power through, which is not what we want to do, then take a water break.
Take a water break.
Because you've taken pause.
It really is game day.
It really is game day.
Yeah.
You take a pause, you get some water, and then you say, hey, can we check in? Remember how I told you I have painful things and actually my back is kind of hurting. These are some positions I like, And again, so that's a way to check in during sex. But again, when you're talking about sex and pain beforehand, since you're the person in the know, it helps to give them feedback and then also let them know, you can ask me questions about this again. This isn't our last conversation. And what do you like? What are your, right? And it's like it creates this ability to talk about sex and all of that fun stuff and find compatibility. But that is really important. Like if you experience painful sex or have had trauma, let your lover know ahead of time. So you set yourself up for success in the moment. And the other really good / painful thing about trauma is it weeds out bad apples. So
it does.
you also want to talk about sex
Yes.
early, because what if you share with someone, oh, I got into a car accident and and this, and then he's rude.
Yeah, he's rude
or dismissive
or uninterested.
or then it's like, cool, good to know I'm not wasting my time.
Yeah.
You know?
It is good to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I wanted to ask, so sexual trauma, because there are people that can have, like, there's obviously a trauma that is specifically like, it is a sexual trauma. Like it is related to sex specifically.
Yeah, like rape or emotional violation or,
Exactly. Those kind of things. I was curious, and I'm sure there's not one way to answer this because everyone's different. But what are the differences or the similarities in those kind of problems, in the kind of difficulties or challenges they can experience versus the difficulties and challenges of someone who their trauma is not from a sexual related thing?
Yeah, I think I'll start with like if your trauma is not sex related, the difference is the way you reconnect to body, at least from the start. Because if you have experienced trauma like yourself, a car accident, but it wasn't sexual trauma, then you're experiencing nervousness, newness, it's intimidating, but sex is not a threat.
Okay,
so that mentally is a very big difference between someone who's experienced sexual trauma, because sex is a threat. Sex could potentially even be the trigger. Connection, pleasure could be the trigger. And so that is a difference, and also can result in a difference of approach, right? Like, if you haven't experienced sexual trauma, but bodily trauma, it could be productive for you to do, quote unquote, like exposure therapy, like you did, of like, you know what, I'm just going to go get fucked.
I'm just going to
do it. I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off.
I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off.
That is not necessarily a bad way to go about it. But if you were experiencing sexual trauma, that could be a very quick way to re-traumatize
yourself. Yeah.
Now, the other big difference with sexual trauma and non-sexual trauma is when you experience sexual trauma, the way something called survival intelligence activates in your brain, and people end up behaving in a spectrum of ways. And there's two big sides of this spectrum after you've been sexually traumatized. One side of the spectrum is completely becoming averse to sex, touch, affection.
Okay.
You do not, maybe you could still experience libido, like you might still have the urges, but the idea of being with someone or attempting to act on those urges, you have a complete aversion to. Okay. So that's one side of the spectrum. The other side is hypersexual. After you get violated, you fuck a lot. You have you're looking for it. You're, maybe, and when you're hypersexual, again, and I want to say, myself and a lot of the leading sex therapists, sex experts, we no longer believe in sex addiction. That is not a right way. That is not the right terminology to use for someone who is being compulsive with pleasure and sex in a way that is not healthy. So I just want to put that out there. But if you are hypersexual, the way to tell, because like I said, like some folks, like some people are Samantha's from Sex and the City, and you like having a lot of sex. There's nothing wrong with that. I love having a lot of sex. And when I experienced my trauma.
My mom and dad aren't going to listen to this one, so we're good with that.
I met your dad at your, remember? He's so sweet. He's so cute. But for anyone listening, when I got violated, the first time I actually became very averse to touch.
Okay.
I withdrew and was very, and that was really hard. And then I healed from that. And then some other stuff happened in life, because trauma will come and go, and so that wasn't the only time that that something happened, and we could talk about that in another episode. But all that to say, I experienced the aversion piece, but then later I experienced hypersexuality. in the
Okay.
way that was different from me enjoying lots of casual sex. So when you are on the hypersexual end of the spectrum and healing from sexual assault or something like that, the reason why it can be unhealthy is usually it's very compulsive. You're not really paying attention to your health or well-being, both mentally and physically. So this can look like not wearing condoms and having sex with a lot of people. Like taking health risks, not doing anything for your mental health. So hypersexuality or aversion to touch are the two sides of the spectrum, and they can both be quite extreme, but you can also fall in different places in the spectrum too,
Okay.
right? Where you go from averse to hypersexual, or maybe you're somewhat hypersexual, but those are the two ways. So when you get traumatized from your body and it's not sexual, it's not really likely that the trauma response is going to instantly be aversion or hypersexuality.
No, I
Yeah.
definitely think I would say not hypersexuality because it was safe, but I definitely had last summer, I called my fuck girl summer. I
We
called
love
my
it.
fuck girl summer, but it was like, so like, I was like, I would go home with guys pretty easily or whatever,
Yeah.
like and do things, but it was always safe.
Yeah.
Like I was always very like, are you
Aware,
clean? Like, are you
safe.
aware? I got
Yeah.
STD test when it was absent. Like, it was
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
aware. It was very conscious. There wasn't
Yeah.
any unhealthy behavior. So that's
Yeah.
not hypersexuality. But I definitely it was definitely part reclaiming my body.
Yeah.
It was reclaiming my
And
body.
that's why the
Yeah.
hypersexual piece isn't a bad, like you're not doing it wrong, or you're not broken, or you're not like, spoiled fruit, if that
Yeah.
is your way. And it also does not take away from the validity of like what happened. I remember I had a
Yeah.
client who she was assaulted. She was a college student. She was assaulted. And then after the assault started being quite hypersexual. And then a lot of people didn't take the trauma that had happened to her seriously because they're like, oh, well, you're having sex. So
All the time,
clearly,
yeah.
And of course, as an expert myself, I'm like, well, no, this person is literally behaving exactly how traumatized people would behave.
Yeah.
But the hypersexual piece can be a part of reclaiming, a part of trying to get control, a part of escape, and all of those, all of those type of things. And over time, it heals, as well. And it's never the end of the world, too. It's just the beginning of a new journey and healing that you have to understand with yourself. And I'd say with people who experience trauma that isn't sexual trauma, I see a lot of that population maybe having more aversion to sex. Like, for example, if you go through a car accident, your body hurts, it might take time to like reclaim and reconnect to libido. That can be quite
Yes.
common. My mom had cancer for most of my life. Like, so I would see, it's like there's that
definitely
piece.
did
Yeah.
that. Definitely took a while to reclaim and reconnect. And then
Yeah.
once I did. Like
Yay!
it was, and
Yeah.
like it was, So it's just definitely a little bit of sex is a roller coaster. And then you add trauma into it and the roller coaster gets a lot scarier and a lot bigger, or not scarier, because a lot of people really enjoy roller coasters. And
I love roller coasters.
That's the way you gotta look at it.
And I was talking to someone recently about this and about life is kind of abusive and toxic, like in general. And people are always obsessed with oh, I want to date, but I don't want to date a toxic person, or I don't want to be toxic. And this person that I was talking to was just like, everything is toxic in its way, and it's supposed to make you grow. So instead of automatically trying to avoid what you perceive as toxic, you need to get curious about what is it that isn't maybe working for you, what could be improved, and then figure out why you've been presented with this toxic situation, because it's meant to make you grow. Everything in life is happening for you, not against you.
Exactly.
And we were talking about indigenous healing, and there's this indigenous African practice that my friend was explaining to me, where no matter what happens to you, you say thank you, especially when you're struggling. And that's the biggest thing to do. You lose your job, okay, thank you. Your boyfriend cheats, thank you. And you're saying thank you not to the people who did you wrong, but more so to just the powers that be. It's a form of surrender, but it's a form of positive surrender that is constantly reaffirming the reality that everything in your life, the good, the bad, the ugly, is happening for you.
Yeah.
It's a gift to you.
Exactly.
And which is a hard pill to swallow because oppression is real. Racism is real. Classism is real. Ableism is real. Capitalism is oppressive. Like and so I feel like the way to really navigate that is like we can't also pretend that oppression and cruelty is not alive and well. And at the same time,
both truths can exist.
Both truths can exist.
Yeah.
Don't be always a victim, Like it's we have to do both. I know for me, like as a woman, as a queer person, like I could very well let the way the world works like beat me down.
Mm-hmm.
And I have realized that like saying thank you and figuring out like why is this happening and how is it meant to make me grow can help me way more than sitting in victimhood. And also for me, like I am an activist and I care about changing these oppressions and like I have my own privilege too that I bring to the table. But it's, all of that dichotomy, all of that complexity. If we're talking about healing trauma, we also do have to talk about the oppression of the world that you're up against because, it's like you can find like with your experience, like you get into this car accident, you start having sex again, you're reclaiming your body and then you go and some sexist, awful thing happens to you and then you shut down again, right? It's like we have to be able to name and be very aware of the world and like oppression and then our own personal power within that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's another piece that can be missing from the conversation and from a lot of wellness and healing spaces where they'll talk about wellness and healing, but then they won't talk about like racism and the effect of that or sexism and the effect of that. And if you're talking about trauma, life is traumatizing. Whether or not life is abusive.
Life is,
whether or not it's your partner doing it or just life punching you and kicking you when you're down. But it's hard to exist in this world. And yet, if everything is here designed to serve you, then like that is another great way to really reposition yourself and heal from trauma and be resilient when life continues to try to test you through re-traumatization, through oppression. Which is why community is important.
Which is why community is so...
Because, if
community is like the pillar of trauma, like
healing.
Recovery.
Yeah,
yes, it's
absolutely.
Like the pillar. Yes.
Absolutely. Because like without community, it feels like you're crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like you're fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And then, a book like Sextrology comes along and validates you. No, but two things I wanted to say that you had me like, yes, is something I always say is everyone comes into your life to give you something. So everyone who is, and everything really, but everyone who is just, you think a bad person or whatever, or they don't treat you, and we're all love and light. There aren't really anything as bad people. There are people who are behaving low vibe at the current moment, but they're not overall a bad person. But anyone who gives you an unfair set of circumstances, that's giving you something. It is giving you something. Everyone comes into your life to give you something. Like this guy that no, he actually wasn't my fuck girl summer. He was later. He was almost a year later. But anyway, he was a douchebag. However, he taught me about this really good wrinkle clothing spray that I use all the time.
Hey.
So I'm like, that person came into my life to give me something. and every time I use the spray, that's what I think about. But I wanted to say that. But then the other thing I wanted to say is I was talking to my friend recently, Jeremy. And I was talking to him, and this was like few months ago at this point. And I was talking to him and I was going through a really hard time relating to sex. It was kind of like finally realizing a series of events that occurred made me finally come to terms with the fact that like a year prior, I had been like sexually, it feels like a big violated feels like a better word, but like I hadn't wanted to admit to it. So like I wanted to do the whole empowering woman thing of like, no, I was in control of that situation the whole time. And then a series of events that occurred a year later made me like finally come to terms with that. And that's a big thing to come to terms with. And the fuck girl summer got a little dark at some point.
Yeah. But that's why a fuck girl summer can be productive because sometimes like you need to be activated to acknowledge like pains we're suppressing.
Exactly. So during that, I asked Jeremy if he could call me, my friend, if he could call me, because I was just like, I just want like a male friend of mine to just like be a sounding board. Like I was like, I have great female friends, but I just like, as it pertains to this specifically, because the perpetrator of the event was a straight male. Like I just want like to hear the words of a straight male counterpoint. And anyway, wound up finding out that during that week, and we'll cut out his name and everything in post, so don't feel bad about it. But wound up finding out that during that week, my friend had their own fair share of bad shit going on. And they still made the time to call me. And it was only after the fact and like really helped me through it and like talked me off the ledge and give me the validation I needed. And it was only after the fact that I found out that they were dealing with their own fucking set of circumstances. And they still made the time to talk to me, which I really, really appreciated. And I wanted to thank them for that. And then we were talking and they said to me like about what I was going through, I'm sorry that you're going through a tough time. And I said, aren't we all always going through a tough time? Like, speaking about what they were going, I was like, life is going through a tough time. Like, we're all always going through a tough time. That's life.
Because it's growth, because the purpose is growth. And to like, every spiritual practice that I've researched, and I love researching spirituality.
Oh my God, I just realized I completely forgot to turn that on. That we forgot to do that. This is why I need the intern.
Or just a checklist.
Yes, or okay. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. It's actually not a spiritual practice, but like that idea of like life equals going through a tough time. Like when I study a lot of history and sex history, and a big part of that is spirituality. So I have been studying spiritual practices and how humans create them and why they create them and how we've done that for the last 50,000 years. And so one thing about spiritual practices, it doesn't matter where it comes from, is that they always really go back to this core principle that life is happening for you, that life is about growth and life is meant to be experienced. And that is really it. Life is meant to be experienced.
Yeah.
And so if you take everything back and think to that, it also really helps put things back into perspective. Because life is really hard.
Yeah.
And in the hardness of life, there's all of these hierarchies of it's harder for this person over here, it's easier for this person over there, and yet it's still all relative. Like you're going to experience pain based on your situation. But yeah, life is really difficult for everybody. It really tests everybody.
Yeah.
And when you know that, it becomes easier to navigate.
Yeah.
You know?
Something that my life coach told me, which I think is brilliant, like a reframe, is she was like, instead of asking yourself, like, why does life keep testing me? Start saying the universe is giving me an opportunity to show that I'm the person who I say I am. And that I'm going to show up with the grace and the right mindset to handle this situation. I'm going to handle this the best that I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is like, and again, I mean, it is all mindset, but I don't ever want to be one of those people who preaches like mindset and wellness, but doesn't also acknowledge like oppression and you know what I mean? Because it's like, that's like the bad part of the wellness and spiritual world is that some folks can get to a point where they're like, oh, well, it's all mental. And it's like, I'm sorry, sexism is real. Racism is real. Like, you can't mental hack your way out of society changing overnight, but we can find our personal power within the oppression, you know? And it's like, and we kind of, I find having that same mindset when I'm approaching trauma is really helpful because trauma can feel like this gigantic, all-encompassing, can't see the light at the end of the tunnel thing. And that it's really just about one step at a time and recentering into your personal power at every level. And we always like to say, like, at every level, there's a different devil, like
I like that.
it's like you heal this one thing. And then, like I said, with my own journey, like I got violated. I started feeling a lot of sexual aversion, and then I healed, and then something else happened. And then I started being hypersexual and so that's life, right? It's like, you're going to continue to, like, I like what you said, not be tested, but be given opportunities to like grow.
Yeah.
And it can help, I think, make the bitter taste of what you can't control or what is unfair and fucked up about this world a little bit easier and better, and give you the tools to navigate it.
Yeah.
It's powerful. And
because because things are going to happen to you that are unfair.
Yeah.
And you're going to live amongst circumstances that are unfair.
Yeah.
And there is so much that we can't control.
Yeah. And speaking of sex, like, you're going to meet people who are going to tell you you're slutty for doing this, or you're not good enough for doing that.
My fuck girl summer, I was called a slut.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And
not in a fun way.
And not in a fun way. Right? Totally. Like, there's going to be all of those things. But you can rise above it. And part of rising above it too is feeling the sadness. You got to feel to heal. So I always like to do like when I do get really down about how something is unfair, maybe it's societal or maybe it's personal, like I give myself the time to grieve. Because that's the other thing we don't do when we're healing trauma. We think, oh, okay, I need to hack this and not feel the sadness and not feel the grief. And it's like, nope, you need to feel the grief. Like,
the only way that the emotion is, you got to let the emotion move through you. If you don't feel the emotion fully, it's never going to leave.
Yeah.
It's never going to leave.
Yeah.
And that was something I realized with my book. So I wrote the first draft. I thought I'd finished the first draft. And then I started doing a lot of new PTSD work and therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that a lot of the book and a lot of what it was written through this lens, this mask of positivity, because that's how I thought I had to be. And that is how I had to be to get through everything that I had to get through. But in order to heal my CPTSD and it just come to terms with all of it, I have to acknowledge that both truths can exist. The positivity is important. It's gotten me to where I am. That is true. It's a great mindset to have. However, I have a lot to grieve. And it's also fucking sucks what I went through. And it's like coming to terms that, like, we humans are very complicated. We are very complex. And you can feel so many things at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're meant to.
Yeah. And that's how sex is too. It's like, it isn't just, I think people think that sex is just supposed to be good, but a lot of times it's not for people. And that's what the problem is, because they think it is supposed to just be good.
And sex is a skill. So it's normal when you first start having sex for it not to be great. It's normal when you meet a new person. Like, like the first time I have sex with a new lover, sometimes it's really awkward and uncoordinated. And like, that's normal.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's like, damn, we really synced in. But I'd say more often than not, it's more normal to have to learn with each other, and all of that is normal because sex is a skill. It's not a talent.
Sex is a skill. It's not a talent.
Yeah.
You gotta get your reps in.
You gotta go to the sex gym.
You gotta go to the sex gym.
It's mental fitness. It's body fitness.
They should have that.
Yeah.
They should have the sex gym and have it connected to a normal gym. And then it'd be like, you can swing as you please.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially.
I'd attend. I'd go.
I would love that.
Yeah.
That'd be incredible.
Especially since like working out actually does boost libido and make you healthier.
Yes.
And like movement and all of when I see people who struggle with like erectile dysfunction or like vaginal dysfunctions, it's like, what is your workout and movement routine? So having a sex gym. Yeah, and that's another thing too, when we're talking about healing trauma, especially if you're healing from bodily trauma that isn't sexual, like working out, moving your body, like, these are all really good ways to also start healing.
Yeah. And I feel like we have a new business idea now. That's what my mind is like. We have a new business idea. I need to table that. Put a pin in it for now. I just think it'd be great. But I definitely think part of what helped me, or I not think, I know that part of what helped me reclaim my body so much more was my emphasis on fitness after my accident. And that also helped me in terms of sex because I'm fucking hot.
Yep.
And so I'm good at this. I'm like, this is a highlight. I'm like, this is a highlight of my persona.
Yeah, totally.
So it's interesting how they go.
Yeah.
But before, because we're over an hour now, so which is amazing.
Yay.
We did it. So I just real quick, let me look at my notes, make sure we hit everything I wanted to hit. This was so great. It's been so great. One thing that I wanted to make sure that we included today is what are healthy coping mechanisms for sex after experiencing trauma versus unhealthy coping mechanisms, and what would your advice to be to a trauma survivor going back into having sex?
Yeah. Well, I would say actually the first advice would be to not try to start categorizing healthy versus unhealthy.
Okay.
Because when you are healing, you're going to be impulsive, compulsive, and you're going to learn after the fact.
Okay.
You know, like boundaries are a perfect example of this. We really only discover a boundary after a line has been crossed. And so as you're healing from trauma, you're going to be making what feels like a lot of mistakes and having a lot of confusing emotions come up. And so the best first thing to do is say, like, I don't need to sit here and judge what
Myself,
I perceive
okay.
to be the right, healthiest way to heal. And in fact, you know, sometimes being the worst version of yourself is part of the healing because it shows you what you don't want to be at a certain point and then gives you the charge to be better. But and so I would say right off the bat, like, you know, don't judge yourself. I would say, like, for healing practices, make moving your body something that you do every single day. This can look like dancing to your favorite song in the morning. This can look like having a workout routine. This can look like I do 10 push-ups every day. Like that's my
really?
little, and I dance to like my favorite song. But so start integrating movement because when we are traumatized, the brain and body try to separate. So you want to do movement to kind of reintegrate. Make a beeline for your loving friends and create a list of all the non-judgmental, loving people in your life that are support systems. People who you can call, people who you can go to see. I don't care if they're in another country. Like, you know, if you can call them, if they're going to be non-judgmental and supportive, because those are the two things. I want you to be around people who are not going to judge the different versions of you as you go through this healing journey. Obviously, talking to a therapist or a coach is great. And if you're healing from sexual trauma, remember, if you want to talk to a therapist, find a sex therapist or a sex coach. If someone does not have the word sex in their title, they very likely have no education or training to help with that specific thing. And for coaches in particular, you want to ask them about their credentials to, again, make sure, because being a therapist, they have a lot of credentials to get. Coaches don't always, but that doesn't mean a coach is bad.
Okay.
And in fact, sometimes the coach is who you need because a therapist is there to process things verbally and sometimes give you exercises, and a coach is there to support you as you take action.
Okay.
Coaches help you take action, and sometimes you need to take action. But you know, looking at
put me in, coach.
Yeah, hey, listen, that's when people come to work with me, it's like they're ready to take some action.
Yes,
you know, like I'm not trying to give you therapy, I'm trying to give you strategy and support you.
Oh yeah, Nadège is pro let's fuck.
Yeah, 100%. And so having a movement practice. Another really wonderful thing when you're healing trauma is to have a journaling morning routine. So every morning.
Morning pages.
Yep.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yep.
Yeah. If anyone's read The Artist's Way, that is like that's from The Artist's Way. But there's so many psychological reasons as to why that is so profoundly healthy to do. And it's like the first thing you wake up, you write at least 2 to 3 pages in a journal, free write. You don't reread it. It's not there to be poetic. You're not supposed, like you just write what you're thinking onto the page. And a reason why this is so helpful is because you're starting the day by getting a lot of emotions out. So you're not carrying it throughout the entire day. And you'll notice if you do morning journaling pages for at least 5 days straight, you will have a completely different, clearer sense of self within a week to 2 weeks. Like you'll feel it immediately. Same with the moving of your body. And then the final thing I'll say, again, if we're thinking just like easy, holistic little tips, again, give yourself the space for grace. If you're like, I'm going to move my body every day because Nadège said so, and then like after 5 days, you just don't on the 5th day and you're depressed and you hate everything, that's okay.
That's...
Let that day be a down day.
Yep.
And tomorrow you start again. That's like one of the biggest, it's so funny when I work with people and I'm like, and I'll give, like if someone's working with me, like we have action steps and home, I call it dream work. It's like the work you do at home to make your dreams happen.
Yeah.
So I have people doing consistent dream work and little things that they need to do every day. And then they'll be like, I missed one. And it's like, well, that's life. You are always going to miss a day.
You're always going to miss a day.
And so now like you need to get into the practice of not letting that consume you or eat your mind. Done is better than perfect. And so, but those are all, things to think of.
Yeah.
And if you're someone who's feeling like, to your original question, well, what's healthy versus unhealthy? I feel like I'm being unhealthy all of the time. Another great thing to think about is like, why are you perceiving this external thing to be the reason why everything else is not working?
Yeah.
That to me is a bigger question. Yeah.
Then why are you perceiving this particular thing? Yes. Yeah. That is good. And writing, like physically writing, not typing. As I've learned recently, can really help you get to the bottom of that.
Absolutely. And a reason why physically writing is more important than typing is because it helps you process it and your brain thinks something 3 times.
Yes.
So when you're typing, your brain isn't doing this. It's not braining the same way.
It's not braining. I've noticed a huge difference since my current neuropsychologist made me start doing these prompts while writing. And my book was only typing. And I didn't want to just write it first because my hand shakes, my handwriting's bad. So it was like an ego thing.
Yeah.
But she was like, no, you have to. And oh my God, the stuff that's come out.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm so much further ahead than like 12 times further ahead on my healing progress in the last month than in the prior 6 because I've started writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
So everyone write.
It's those are just really helpful, simple things. And then if you want to take it to the next level, like if you want to heal faster or smarter, then you need to work with someone.
You need to work with someone.
And that's true for anything. You know what I mean? It's like if you're a business owner and you want to go, you need to you need to get mentorship. If you want to heal, mentorship. If you want to do it faster and smarter, then find someone who can help you.
Yeah.
And if you're at a place where you aren't ready to invest in that or you don't want to pay for that, then you can do the steps on your own and you can heal your life. There are amazing books. There's, like you said, you can go to pleasurescience.com, check out, the healing trauma and self-sabotage, guided video journey that I have that's helped thousands of people. You can do these things that are a much lower investment. The difference is it's just not going to be as quick.
It's not going to be as quick.
But sometimes that's how it's meant to flow. I always like to tell people if you can't afford something, then it's not what you need to get to the next level. Because I actually get this a lot where people will slide into my DMs and they'll be like, I want to work with you as a coach. And I'm like, okay, well, this is the investment for a one-on-one personalized, working with me container. And they're like, oh my gosh, I just can't invest in something like that, And then I'm like, okay, well then that means if someone says, oh, I can't invest in it, but actually they can and they have other resistance, then it's like, no, you probably need to take this step. But if it's someone who it's like, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, I can't do that, then it's like, oh, you don't need to spend more than your means in order to get to where you're meant to go. Life is always giving you every single thing that you need to get you to where you want to go. And so if you don't have the time, if you don't have the money, if you don't, or, whatever is happening and it's not in alignment, that's the other thing. It's I think when we're healing, we think, God, if I just had that thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm working with the celebrity coach, not a regular therapist, or I'm a part of this community, but not whatever it is. If it's not working for you for some way, that's a message. You don't need it to get to the next level. You always have everything that you
have
need.
to work with what you have. You have to focus on what you have. You cannot focus on once I get.
Shit ain't real.
No, that's not the way. You got to feel the thing now and you got to focus on what you have.
Yeah.
Because believe me, from someone who felt like they had nothing, I actually had quite a lot.
Yeah.
Now look at where we are.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, but thank you so much. Letting yourself off the hook is so important for all aspects of life.
Yeah.
So obviously it's important for working with sex. Like letting yourself off the hook is so important. Forgiving yourself is so important. It's you can't walk around with resentment towards yourself or towards anyone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it will drain your energy, make you a very low vibe human.
Yeah.
So we have to let ourselves off the hook. Lastly, we've recommended pleasure science, we've recommended you. I want you to give your rec for trauma survivors who are interested in sex, or just people who are interested in learning about sex and trauma. It could be your own thing. It could be something else, just your resource rec. Truly any resource at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, healing trauma and self-sabotage, that guided video journey is amazing. But a recommendation that isn't something that I made, that is like one of my Bibles for healing, is a book called Healing Sex. And I believe the full title is Healing Sex, a mind, body, I forget, it's something, mind, body approach to healing sexual trauma. That's the book. Healing Sex, a mind body approach to healing sexual trauma. It's written by a woman named Stacy. Oh, I wish I remembered her last name off the top of my head.
Oh, we can look it up and put it in the show notes.
Yeah. But that book is incredible. That book is awesome, trauma informed. There's prompts at the end of every chapter. There's a questionnaire to ask a therapist or a coach to make sure they're the right fit for you. So that's really great.
Okay.
And that's like a book. You could buy that for $20. If you wanted something that could hold your hand a little bit more and give you really actionable, like meditations designed for healing sexual trauma and an explanation as to what happens to your brain and body, how to heal that and all of that good stuff, I would go to pleasurescience.com and check out our healing trauma. Because that's what that's for. It's like, why is this happening? What do I do about it? And like, how can I have support all the way through? And I also have some like amazing free guides on healing trauma, on healing self-sabotage. So I'm happy to give that to you in the show notes. I have one called Rapid Trauma Healing. That's amazing. Yeah. Like so those are some things that anybody could do and start with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nadège was my go-to for all sex-related resources. And I
love it. Sex is my middle name.
I wasn't it like didn't know, like even I would never have considered purchasing a sex resource before I met you. I was like, that's way too taboo. And and now I'm like, ooh.
No, and it's a good way to start because you can also buy it and it's private. And then
you
it's
can
just
buy
like,
it, it's private,
it's like, I'm going through this thing. Yeah, it's not
thing.
like the world, Instagram doesn't know. It's not I
have a cheetah print, because my brand is cheetah print, basically, like my personal brand, box in my bedroom. And like my mom has never looked, and no one's allowed. I told her so many times, I'm like, you're not allowed to look in there. And like whenever, I've been like, you're not allowed to go in there. And literally what's in it is like, books like this, a bunch of sex toys, different kinds of lube, like condoms, and I'm like, Mom, you're not allowed to go in there.
Yep.
All the fun stuff. But real quick, we've already said where the people can find you, basically. But just if there's anything else that you want to say that you think, oh, we haven't talked about this and I want to get out there, or if you think, because we can put that earlier, or if you just want to tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at Instagram at Pleasure Science, at TikTok at Pleasure Science, YouTube at Pleasure Science. I think you guys are getting the trend.
Yes.
You can go to pleasurescience.com if you want to learn more about all the offerings and ways to work with me or check out the events that we have coming up. And the Pleasure Science podcast is also on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple, so you can check that out as well.
And just to be clear, again, the only reason why this thing ever got up off the ground is Nadège. She was just like, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. And I was like, oh, I hadn't even even considered these things. And now we're very
Now
new.
you're here, baby.
We're very new, but we've started.
Yeah.
We've started, and so many things I would not have done or known that I needed to do if you weren't who told me to do it. So
Oh, so happy to help.
with announcing my release date in advance.
Oh, yeah.
That was literally because you were like, you need to announce your
Yeah.
release date in advance.
Yes, you
need
do,
to pick
girl.
one. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the launch party.
Yep.
I would have never had a launch party unless you told me to do it.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm a great person to get advice from. This was so amazing.
Thank you
so
for
much for
having
sitting down.
me.
And maybe I'll get you on for a second episode.
I'd
Because
love to.
You said that there was something we would talk about in another episode.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a nice, fun little teaser. But thank you so much. As usual, follow me on Instagram, sign up for my newsletter, follow me on TikTok at Gabriella Rebranded for everything, GabriellaRebranded.com. Like, subscribe, review, rate, do all the fun things. You guys are the best as always. This has been Gabriella Rebranded with Most Lose Some. Thank you, Nadège.